I'm chatting to Geoffrey White, the CEO of Agility. We've just come off the World Economic Forum on Africa, the 25th World Economic Forum on Africa stage, and we've debated a number of issues around Africa's economic growth outlook. Before we dive into the Captains of Industry story, just your thoughts on what has unfolded at the World Economic Forum this year.
I think it's really interesting. Firstly, it's now the biggest regional forum that World Economic runs. So Africa's clearly getting more and more prominence and more focus. And I think that matches the dialogue that's going on, which is things have moved on to focusing on execution and how do I do business in Africa rather than should I do business in Africa. So I think globally, people are now aware of the African opportunity. That message has been absorbed, and what they're looking at is how do I execute and how do I actually build business on the continent.
We've spoken about a number of challenges, infrastructure, we've spoken about education, health across the continent, policy uncertainty. As a company that's operating on a day-to-day basis across Africa, what for you is the number one challenge?
I think the infrastructure is crucial to being competitive and developing prosperity, and that's really what it's all about. So getting the infrastructure investment coming is fundamental to driving that growth. I think some countries are doing it faster than others, but there is a clear commitment and a clear communication working now between the private sector, agencies, global banking, DFIs, to actually come up with a solution. And I'm a firm believer that the solutions are there. So there is money there to invest in Africa. It's getting the coordination and the implementation done properly that actually brings the solutions.
In terms of infrastructure challenges, logistics challenges, those touch points where businessmen are saying that from Cape Town they have to fly all the way to Dubai and then from Dubai into Lagos rather than going direct from Cape Town to Lagos or Johannesburg to Lagos. Do you think we're going to resolve those issues in the short term?
Again, it's not an instant fix, but it's getting better day by day and week by week and year by year. You've got Fly Dubai now actively getting involved in the continent. You've got more airlines creating capacity. Airline fares are coming down, but it's not a one-day fix, it's a process. But that process is moving forward. Likewise, from a logistics perspective, there's a lot to do, but every little bit that gets fixed in the logistics network makes the price of logistics more competitive, makes Africa more globally competitive, allows manufacturers to deliver their goods or export them at a better rate. So there's real tangible progress going on.
Let's talk a bit about Agility and the business behind the company that you have now aggressively moved onto the continent. What is at the heart of the company?
Okay, so Agility is a global logistics leader. We think we understand and like emerging markets. We do just over $5 billion a year in revenue and have 20,000 employees around the world. And what we do is we do logistics for multinational corporations and major capital projects. And we do that very successfully in the Far East, in the US, in the Middle East, in Europe. And what we've seen is an increasing requirement from our existing customers who now say, we now understand the African opportunity, we want to go to Africa, but there's a missing link. There isn't the ability to deliver with proper transparency, accountability, visibility, and tracking of our products to access the African market. So what we're doing as Agility is building 70 100-acre logistics parks across the continent to provide a regional network, so builds regional connectivity, builds an export platform for African producers.
You're almost establishing economic zones, would that be fair terminology?
They're little nuggets of where things will work. So we contractually tell our customers the power will stay on, the IT connectivity will work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There'll be secure environments. So there's somewhere where you can come as an African business or a global business and actually do business, rather than spending 2 days a week trying to get the lights back on.
Your leadership style. I know that you spend a lot of your time in the air, given the geography that you have to cover on a regular basis. Are you on the ground? Do you stand in Lagos, in Kenya, and really experience what it's like to do business on the continent?
I think doing business in Africa is fundamentally about being there and being on the ground. It's relationship driven, it's building confidence of the people you're dealing with that you can deliver a good product. So it's absolutely essential that you engage you engage with the communities you work in, you engage with your customers, and you actually physically stand there and come up with the solutions.
An interesting model was Nielsen deploying their manufacturing plant into Nigeria. This happened last year. Do you think we're going to see more trends along those lines where companies, multinationals take risks on establishing manufacturing hubs on the continent?
It's interesting. I think globally there's a growing trend where people want to manufacture near where their market is. So that opens the ability for Africa to become a manufacturing hub. Now I think power is the biggest constraint to that, because if you're a manufacturer and the power goes off 3 days a week, you can't manufacture competitively. But there's definitely an appetite, given that power is available, there's definitely an appetite for more and more manufacturing to be done at source in Africa for the African population.
Geoffrey, agility from here, are you going to see massive growth into other emerging markets, and how do other emerging markets compare with the Africa story?
Well, we're already very established in other emerging markets, and it's bringing the logistics solutions to those markets that's prompted our existing customers to say, can you do the same in Africa? So hence this investment program and building capacity to handle goods properly and do that route into market and route out of market within the continent. But what's interesting about that is if you look at our first project that'll open this year is in Ghana, and one of the interesting aspects with that was one of the first people to come and talk to us about taking space in the facility was about to build his own warehousing, had raised $5 million from a local bank, was being charged 29% for raising the money, and now he's parked that, he's using that money to grow his business, and is coming into our facility using our infrastructure to grow his business. So I think it's a really nice SME growth story here to actually support African businesses as they develop.
The regionalization story that everybody is talking about when it comes to Africa, are you seeing that happening on the ground? We look at the East African community, they're definitely leading the charge in that regard. But is that the only territory where we're seeing traction?
No, I think there's traction in ports becoming more efficient, in the flow of goods just getting better. East African community has made huge progress in removing border controls and constraints, which actually aren't cost related, so are easy to remove. And I think other of the economic communities could do that. I think the idea of an African free trade zone is appealing, but I think they need to do it in bite-sized steps for it to actually be actioned and get up and working. But without any doubt, the logistics flow of goods is improving, but has a huge long way to go to be comparable with other countries.
When you look at logistics hubs, Agility has a very strong presence in Dubai. And that seems to be a trend, that Dubai is now the access point for Africa, and I think it's simply because Emirates does such a good job of flying across the African continent. But that's going to be a very tough destination for any African city to ultimately compete with, given the advancements in technologies that we're seeing in the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, listen, Dubai is an interesting place to visit and do business. It's an interesting place to be based, and as a company that's got an operation out of Dubai focused at Africa, the reality is the connectivity is brilliant on Emirates, so you can get in and out of countries to go and do business. And from a shipping perspective and logistics, Dubai is building that reputation for being the consolidation point to then feed into Africa. So I think it's got very strong momentum. But you see locations like Djibouti are making very strong inroads into becoming distribution hubs. Senegal is doing the same. And if you look at the flow of sea freight specifically, larger container vessels are going up to 14,500 TEUs being delivered at any one time, look to come into nodes of distribution and then have feeder services into the rest of Africa. So that's also growing with momentum.
If you look at Africa, one of the debate points here at the World Economic Forum has certainly been around corruption. We quote the stats widely from Transparency International, which sees a focus of corruption on the continent. Do you face this on a day-to-day basis, given your depth and breadth across the African continent? Absolutely,
and what you do, and it sometimes slows down negotiations and process, but you just have a no-tolerance policy. So you just say, we don't do that. And if that means you walk away from a transaction, you walk away from a transaction. But I think if you want to build a long-term sustainable business in Africa, which is what we're focused on, we're not here for a couple of years, we're here for 100 years. So if you want to build that sort of long-term sustainable focus, you've got to do it properly, and you've got to do it properly from the roots right to the top of the tree.
Do you believe that there is patient capital in the African context when investors are deploying money? Or is it really more of a short-term focus?
No, I think there's an increasing amount of long-term capital looking for investment. One of the strengths of Agility is we self-fund our projects. So I don't have to go back to banks to raise money to look at investing in the projects. We as a board, we sit, we decide, we think this is strategic, it makes sense, we're going to hit our investment thresholds, and then we can commit to doing it and actually executing and getting on with the project. And I think in an emerging market, to have that ability is a huge advantage.
Geoffrey, what do you want your legacy to be?
I would like my legacy to be a little step in improving the logistics in Africa. From a human resources perspective, we're hugely focused on capturing locals, empowering them, giving them the skills, training, the transfer, and again, being a global customer is a great advantage in that. I can take people from Mozambique, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Nigeria, I can take them into the Agility network all around the world, give them the skills transfer, show them how we operate, show them how we interact with our big global customers, and then bring them back with those skills to train the trainers and implement those capacities on the continent. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges to raising standards and raising the ability to deliver what our customers are wanting, is about upgrading and employing human resources to implement those standards.
It's been such a pleasure, Geoffrey White, the CEO of Agility. Thank you very much, sir.
Very nice to see you. Thank you.